Hey guys, today we're driving the 2021 Volkswagen Passat. The Passat was refreshed for the 2020 model year, and this one that we're driving tonight is the R line, which means it has 19-inch wheels and revised front and rear bumpers. MSRP on this is around $30,000. It's powered by a 2-liter turbocharged engine that makes surprisingly low 174 horsepower, but it does make 206 pound-feet of torque. So you've got a little bit of a meaty power band in there. That's mated to a 6-speed automatic, and that is the only drivetrain that's available on the new Passat. This is still based on the older Passat platform. This is not the updated new MQB platform that the Chinese and European Passats ride on, similar to the Volkswagen Golf. So, in America, we're still getting the old Passat, and it kind of shows its age and feels it like it's a little bit dated. You can see it on the interior, but they have done some things to refresh the exterior and make it look a little bit nicer. We've got quite a lot of interior space, but that does encroach a little bit on trunk space. That said, though, it's still a pretty massive trunk. Not quite as big as it used to be, but we still get a spare tire in there and 60/40 folding rear seats. It's a nice little handle to bring the trunk down. And look at this back seat room. This is enormous. Just huge. I don't think there's much else in this class that has this much leg room. It's almost ridiculous. I kind of like it. Otherwise, it's pretty basic back here. Not a whole lot going on. We've got a couple of USB ports and an armrest with some cup holders. Volkswagen, I think, used to have some of the nicest interiors and materials in their class, and today I would say they're just about average. For the price point, for the starting price of this Passat, which is around $23,000, not too bad for 30 grand. I think you could do a lot better in a lot of the other vehicles in this class, but I think if you want a German vehicle, I mean, this is kind of the only way to go right now. These 19-inch wheels do look sharp, and they definitely aid in handling. I've never heard of Gitti tires, but these are Gitti Comforts. Our fuel economy tests this week have yielded over 40 mpg. If you want to check out Charlie's video on that on Daily Motor, where he does his fuel economy run, and you can get a pretty detailed idea of what this will do on the highway. Otherwise, pretty standard Passat. Not a whole lot to talk about here. We still have basically the same gauge cluster that we've had for the last decade. There's a center display and a tach and a speedometer on both sides. You've got your steering wheel controls, which I found to be a little bit confusing even after using a bunch of different Volkswagens with these controls over the years. I mean, you do get used to it. They look sharp, but I think they could go with a slightly more intuitive design and layout. You kind of have to pay more attention to what buttons you're pressing sometimes. There is a nice button right here, though, to pop your trunk, and all the buttons and switches and useful things in this car are very well laid out and very obvious. Nice buttons and knobs for climate control. You have heated seats. This infotainment screen, although small, is pretty responsive. Apple CarPlay integrates nicely, and we have a Fender sound system that we will test at the end of this video. I do quite like Volkswagen's Fender audio. It's a decent sound system for the price. Up here we've got our sunroof controls, a place to put some sunglasses, interior lights that look quite nice. Let's take this thing for a drive. Show you guys what the reverse camera looks like. Pretty wide angle, a little bit of distortion. Great visibility. Very light steering. One thing I do really like about this Passat is the fuel range. It has I think an 18.5 gallon fuel tank, and if you're on a highway on a road trip getting 40 miles to the gallon, you should easily be able to get over 600 miles, almost maybe 700 miles to a tank if you really run it dry. And that's pretty impressive. This 2-liter turbo almost feels naturally aspirated. It has a pretty wide power band, though it never really hits as hard as you want it to. That said, I think the power is pretty adequate, though there are a lot of other cars in this class for this price with much more powerful and more exciting engines. One of my complaints with this Passat is the brake pedal is kind of hard to modulate. It feels very overly assisted and just over boosted, and I think it's a little bit difficult to come to a smooth stop sometimes. Otherwise, the driving dynamics of this new Passat are about how you'd expect. Very light steering. It weights up nicely when you get into a corner, but there isn't really any feel to speak of. The brake pedal, we've already talked about that. Ride quality is excellent, and I think if you didn't have the 19-inch wheels, if you had a set of 17s or 18s on here, the ride quality would be even better. That said, though, with the 19s, it rides pretty well. There's just a little bit of noise over potholes and bumps from the road imperfections. I do like the design of this interior. It's very minimal, it's very simple. There is a lot of plastic, but overall, all your touch points are really nice. The steering wheel feels great in hand. The shifter feels great. They've added a nice leather onto the handbrake surfaces. It is interesting to compare this to the Volkswagen Arteon that we had about a month ago. And, you could say that the Arteon is kind of a gussied up Volkswagen Passat. But, I don't know, for the price, the Arteon is quite a bit nicer than this new Passat. So it's kind of interesting comparing the two back to back. Let's look at handling here. Pretty sharp around corners, which is impressive for how nicely the car rides. Not a lot of body roll, pretty high limits. Very easy to drive and approach corner aggressively. Cruise control is very easy to operate and use. You can set your following distances very nicely. Lane keep assist is just an assist system. It doesn't keep you, there's no centering like Hyundai's system, for example, with highway driving assist. And every time you turn on the Passat, lane keep assist always engages. So you have to go in and do this little button dance, side, turn signal stock, OK button, turn signal stock, to disable it if you want to. It's a little bit of an intrusive system. It can kind of catch you off on occasion. For the most part, it's pretty unintrusive, but for those few moments where you need to avoid a pothole or do something else, it can be a little bit annoying. On the highway, there's not a lot of wind noise. A little bit of tire noise from these 19s, but that's to be expected. These seats are very comfortable. I have great visibility. Pretty nice place to be, and of course you're going to get tons of fuel range and pretty nice fuel economy with this 2-liter turbo, which is tuned for efficiency. Using the radar guided cruise to slow us down here. It's a pretty smooth system. It does work quite well in traffic, and for daily use I find myself using it quite a bit. This 6-speed automatic is okay. It does a pretty good job putting its power down, shifting quickly. It'll stutter occasionally in traffic when you're kind of on and off throttle around 30-40 miles an hour, but for the most part it does a pretty good job. I think the takeaway from this new Passat is this isn't really a driver's car. This is just a car to get you from A to B. It's stylish, it looks good, it's reasonably priced, it's a Volkswagen. But there's nothing here that's class leading or even, remotely enticing, I think, for the enthusiast drivers. Maybe like there used to be. That old 5-cylinder that was in the previous generation Passats was a cool engine. It sounded nice. This 4-cylinder just sounds like a 4-cylinder. I think if you're an enthusiast buyer and you want a Volkswagen, just get a GTI. It's always been their best car, and it still is. Even the Jetta GLI I found isn't as nice as the new GTI. So I think, if you want a Passat and you can find one at a good price, it might be a good buy, but there are a lot of other cars in this class that really, I think, win out in terms of driving enjoyment, features, feel. They just feel a little bit higher quality, built a little bit nicer. And this Passat, unfortunately, is still feeling a bit dated. There really isn't a whole lot different here besides Apple CarPlay from 2012. All right, let's go in and listen to this Fender sound system. We've got our sound system test tracks here. Anyway, pretty nice sound system. This Fender is impressive. I think it's probably a little bit better than the Camry sound system, the Accord. Definitely better than the Accord, actually. All right, guys. Well, that is the new Passat. I think this is still a decent car. If you want a German-engineered mid-size sedan at an affordable price, I mean, this is the way to go. This is what you get. I would still highly recommend a GTI for everyone. But, you know, they're still kind of trying to keep this Passat fresh. I would like to see Volkswagen bring the MQB platform over to the US, but I'm sure they're going to try to eke out a few more years in this thing just because sedans just aren't selling as well as they used to. And from a business perspective, I guess that makes sense. Still, a little bit of a disappointment to see this Passat basically the same as it has been for the last decade. All right, guys, that's it for this one. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next video. They do still offer the shank key, which is nice. So you got that going for you. It is fun to play with.